Hey guys, it's Dr. May. So we've come to the end of the working memory lessons for sensorimotor psychotherapy. So I wanted to do a video to summarize all that we learned, to kind of put it all together and kind of consolidate it so that we could know what we want to do and what we want to try first, and kind of see the compare and contrast between the different memory skills. Okay, so that's going to be the goal of today's video. Here we go. All right. So I found a kind of a space age visual here. So for our overview of working with memory. So this is, again, the phase 2, right? So phase 1 was working with, was developing resources rather. This one was working with memory. And then the next one is going to be moving forward. Okay. So coming to a YouTube theater near you very shortly will be phase 3, moving forward. All right, but for now, let's consolidate and learn more about working with memory. Okay, so the first lesson was implicit memory and your resource repertoire. Okay, so we can combine some of what we learned in the resource section and kind of put it into the memory section. Okay, so that was the goal of learning the resources first. We need to be resourced and be able to cope with the memories that come up. All right, and so if we feel dysregulated, if we feel uncomfortable, we want to be able to manage it. So that's why that section came first. Okay, so just review what implicit memories are. Okay, so explicit memories are the memories that we remember on purpose, verbally, like details about facts or details about our life. Okay, so that would be declarative memory about the facts, and autobiographical memory, details about our life. Implicit memories are not conscious memories. They kind of come up through our body motions, through our experiencing, through our emotions. And those are kind of just things that kind of come up for us. All right, so implicit memories, to define it, involves re-experiencing, re-feeling, and reliving the story of our past as if it were happening right now. And it kind of just becomes part of our reaction to a situation. And we feel like we're responding to something that's happening now, but we're actually responding so much more like we're responding to the past. So in the picture I have here, there's a man yelling at a woman. And then in the second picture, which is kind of the memory bubble, there's a father yelling at a daughter. And in both cases, they might have similar feelings. Maybe they feel scared or ashamed. They have similar postures. They're kind of covering themselves for protection. They're crouching over. They're leaning away. So there's similar movements, right? So the building blocks in both are kind of the same. So in the second one, she's reacting as if she's still a little child being yelled at by her father, even though she's being yelled at perhaps by her partner this time. So instead of being able to take more empowering action as an adult, she's still crouching down and scared and frightened like a little child. Okay. It may not be possible in her situation to do more than what she's doing. So I'm not trying to blame the victim at all, but sometimes we end up finding ourselves reacting just the same way. And it feels like a very familiar situation. And it's because our body learned that that's what helped us in the past. And so we might as well call it up and do it again, because it was a survival technique that we automatically used, right? So, so let's look at the second bullet. So when triggered by familiar feeling, right? Familiar feeling situations, people, physiological sensations, even something that feels similar in our body, or even talking about the past, we're likely to have the same activation of our building blocks. So similar thoughts might come up. So in the picture with the woman and the girl, maybe the thought is, I'm no good, or I must have did something wrong, right? Similar movement, she's crouching down. Similar body sensations. Maybe there's a shakiness, maybe there's a tenseness, maybe there's a numbness, right? 5 sense perceptions might be the same too, the kind of things that come to mind. And so it feels the same, and it's activated in the same kind of way, especially in a body and emotional level. So in this lesson, we learned that to recognize when implicit memories are coming up for us. And sometimes it's when we have a more extreme reaction to a current situation that's out of balance with what we should be feeling. So that's a clue that maybe we're reacting to something that's being triggered in us rather than just a neutral current situation. So we talked about how when this happens, after we recognize it, we can now make a different choice. We could be mindful of the fact that we're experiencing these same building blocks and instead choose to use our resources to calm down, get a little more centered and mindful, and maybe make some more empowering choices about how to deal with this current situation in a new adult way, rather than a childlike way, or in a way that was based in survival rather than based in empowerment. Okay, so really important stuff here. Okay, so the next lesson was reconstructing memory. And I really like this tool because you could use it for any memory. It doesn't just have to be a trauma memory. It could be something that you want to resolve a little bit more or see a little bit differently, but it wasn't necessarily traumatic, just to kind of get yourself a different view. Okay, so here's the main idea. The past already happened. We can't change the details of what happened in the past. However, memory isn't a static thing. Memory changes each time we dip in and pull it back out. And it's filtered through our current knowledge and understanding and where we are in our life right now. So I could choose to go back in and retrieve a memory from the past and choose to focus on different details or more details than I previously did. So maybe if I dipped in and I first pulled a memory out, I initially would be focusing on the bad stuff that happened or the most painful aspects of that memory, or the parts that made me decide negative things about myself, others, or the world. This time around, I can maybe choose to focus on different parts of the memory that would help me see it in a different light. So not that I'm erasing what happened or discounting the bad things that happened. I'm still validating that those things may have been bad or wrong or should not have happened, right? But at the same time, I could also remember some other things before, during, or after that were resourcing, that were more positive. Maybe there's things that I did to survive it that I can now give myself credit for. Maybe there's things I was doing before the memory that were positive in my life that I kind of put aside and I could bring them back. Or maybe there's things that happen afterwards, such as being helped by somebody that I could recall and that could kind of make me feel a little bit better about the fact that certain people would help me, for example, right? So if I really look deeply, I probably can find certain things that are worth adding to my memory picture that would help me see it in a different or better light and help me be less triggered and upset by that memory. And in fact, if I really focus on the right kinds of details, if they're available to me, I could start to feel more confidence, competence, even capability, mastery, right? Because I have power of my memory, so that gives me a sense of confidence. But maybe back then I had an ingenious way to get through the situation that helped me survive it and not make it worse. So maybe staying small and quiet or hiding out was something that was really good for me. Or maybe getting really, really angry was something that repelled somebody who was dangerous, and that was a really good idea. So I could bring that out and say, you know what, that was real smart of me. My unconscious or conscious thought of these things, and it really helped. Or I knew how to pick out somebody who would help me in this situation afterwards and who did make me feel a little bit better. It didn't erase what happened, but it did show me that some people care. Okay, so think about it and see how you could adjust the way you see your past memories. Okay. All right. So the next lesson was dual awareness of past and present. Okay. So another really useful skill for working with our painful, difficult memories. Okay. So this was the main model that we used throughout the discussion here. So we would pick something from our past that we want to work on. So I can either talk about it or think about it. What's the thing that I want to bring to mind today? So whatever it is I pick, I have to get enough detail to kind of reanimate it, re-embody it, make myself feel like I'm there again. Okay, so I want to activate building blocks in the present moment that are the same kind of ones that were activated during that painful past experience. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to activate the past while being in the present, noticing my building blocks with mindfulness, and also being very aware of the fact that I am in this present moment. Because what happens when we're swept away by trauma is we lose the present and we get lost in the past. So instead of just being lost in the past and overwhelmed by it, I always want to keep one foot in the present. So I have one foot in the past and one foot in the present. And being aware of both helps to ground me a little bit more. So I'm going to stay anchored in my surroundings. It can also help if you do this with a person, especially a therapist, who could help ground you and anchor you, right? Making that eye contact with somebody, seeing the care in somebody's eyes, in their expression, listening to their calming voice could help you stay in the present while you're noticing your building blocks and prevent you from getting sucked back into the past, okay? And another thing we could also employ here is our resources. So if you developed and recognize and practice your resource repertoire, you could pull out those resources at any time to help bring you back into your window of tolerance, a comfortable level of arousal, and manage the reactions that come up. So help calm down your physiology, calm down your emotions. And you could, start in the past, feel the building blocks in the present, be mindful of them, get a little bit overwhelmed, and then use your resources and calm down and stop. Or you, after using your resources and calming down, you could choose to try it again. You could dip back in the past and, try it again, noticing your building blocks. And if you do it a few times, you might notice that it's not going to become as triggering because now you have something new in the mix. You're adding your resource repertoire in here to help you stay more balanced than you were in the past. So it's a new experience of recalling the memory that's going to make it easier for you to manage. But the key thing is that you're in control of this process. You could still stop at any time. You could use resources as long as you want to. You could put off the process for another week or a month if you want to. So it really puts you in the driver's seat. Okay. All right. So next, we kind of tweak that process a little bit by talking about the sliver of memory. Okay. So here we just talked about the memory in general, like, think about the memory. Here we're being a little more specific and we're saying that instead of trying to come up with a story about the whole memory, or really coming up with the whole big thing, which might be overwhelming, we just want to bring up a little piece of it, a little sliver of it. So think of something that'll bring you to the edge of your window of tolerance, but not be too overwhelming. Okay, it could be a look in somebody's eye, or something that was said to you, or a certain moment in time that kind of brings it up for you. Okay, and once you get that sliver going and you experience that activation of your building blocks in the present, that's all you need. You don't need to go through the entire memory. So it keeps it also in a more manageable space, okay? So you bring up the sliver, you tune into your building blocks in the present. So you have the past and the present going at the same time. You're anchoring yourself in the present by reminding yourself that you're still in the here and now, and it's not happening now. You're just recalling it and feeling it, okay? Again, being with another person, such as a therapist, could help you stay grounded in the here and now. All right. And at any time, if you're a little bit overwhelmed, you could use your resources to help bring you back to your window of tolerance. Okay. Next, restoring empowering action. Okay. Very important. This gives us a great sense of control and a sense of empowerment, of course, right? Because we're not just going to be hijacked by our emotions or by our defense mechanisms. Okay. So on the left side here, we could see the 5 major animal defenses. So fight, flight, crying for help, freezing, and shutting down. Okay. So if you have a history of trauma, chances are one of 2 things might be going on for you. So one is that you might have a favorite, so to speak, defensive action that you tend to go to a lot. So you might be somebody who, no matter what, even at a small trigger, you might freeze or shut down. You might, numb out for any, little triggering anxiety thing. Okay, that just might be your go-to because your body learned and practiced that response a lot. Other times you might be somebody with a quote unquote anger problem, and you might always be ready to fight and argue. Okay, so your fight response might be your default. Okay, so instead of flexibly being able to use the right defense in the right situation in the most appropriate way, you might gravitate toward one, whether or not it's appropriate. It's like using a hammer for every task, instead of using a hammer in this task and a screwdriver in that task and a wrench in that task, right? I'm using the same tool for everything. And it's not always the most effective way to go, okay? So you might overuse it, and you might use it in an extreme way. So maybe I don't just get a little bit angry in the fight response. I might go off the rails. I might get really angry. I might really lose my temper. I might go on and on and on, right? And that's too much. It might be totally overkill, right? Like kind of, you know, not just wearing a spring jacket in 70-degree weather, but wearing a whole big parka and a big hat and everything. It's too much, okay? So we might go overboard with the defense, right? So that might be one thing. So I have a favorite one and I overuse it and doing it in an extreme way. And then doing it in that extreme way might have bad consequences for me, okay? Socially, it might create negative consequences. Also, I might be so uncomfortable by that strong defense and that feeling that goes with it that I might use rash means to calm myself down. Okay, if it happens to be that in a mobile defenses you're having, you might have lost access to more mobilizing defenses, and that's a problem, right? So you might, for example, if you get criticized by somebody, you might just shut down and not know what to say. But whereas an appropriate response may have been to be assertive and to say something, but you lose access to that more mobilized response, okay? Or you should have stood up for your rights. So you should have fought back a little bit, but you shut down, okay? Or maybe you're in a situation where you're at a social gathering and you're feeling really uncomfortable because of the people who are there, or maybe there's some drinking going on, you're trying to stay away from alcohol, and you kind of freeze and you feel like part of me knows I should go, but I can't move, I can't go. I'm just stuck, right? So that becomes a problem because flight might have been a better response, just getting out of there, okay? So we want to have access to everything. So how do we get access to everything? Well, of course, directed mindfulness is the key, all right? We have to notice early signs of us being in one of those defenses, okay? If you're experiencing an intense reaction, well, think, well, what's the animal defense I'm in right now? Okay, what's the urge that I have, the action urge associated with that animal defense? Okay, do I want to shut down? Do I want to reach out for help for somebody and start calling somebody? Do I want to run away and get out of here? Do I feel my foot jiggling like I want to just run? Do I feel like I'm tensing up like I want to fight with somebody or blurt something out? Okay, so instead of just doing it, I'm going to notice what that urge is. Okay, early signs of it. It might even be a muscle twitch. I might notice my hand clenching a little bit because I'm getting a little angry and I want to fight. Okay, so I'm just going to mindfully notice what that urge is. Okay, and practice in probably the comfort of your home or your therapist's office, expressing that urge in a slow and careful way. So instead of right, or running out of here, I might slowly walk around the room or slowly in my chair move my feet around as if I'm running away and really feel what that feels like. Or if I want to fight, I might slowly push at the wall and feel the power in my arms, right? If my urge is to push somebody away, okay? If I want to cry for help, I might practice reaching for somebody and feel what that feels like to reach out for somebody, okay? And doing this in a more regulated manner prevents me from, one, not having access to it to begin with. It gives me access to the feeling of doing that defense if I happen to be more stuck in the immobile side. And if I'm in the doing it too much side, it helps me do it in a more regulated way. So instead of exploding with anger, I'm going to feel the anger, but in a more measured way that's not going to hurt anybody. Okay, or I'm not going to run away and just escape every situation because that's my go-to. I'm just going to feel what it feels like to move and to get out of here without actually having to get out of here. Okay, and that kind of helps me regulate all those things. Okay, or if I'm used to shutting down and freezing, I can notice early signs that I want to move and just allow myself to do it. Allow myself to do the cry for help, flight, or fight. So I finally unlock those defenses, which were locked down in the freeze of the shutdown. All right, hope that kind of makes sense. Okay, so next one, recalibrating your nervous system. All right, this was a really important one as well, because when our nervous systems are poorly calibrated because of trauma, we don't have a clear sense of what's safe and what's dangerous. It's like our our meters off, right? We might think certain things are safe when they're actually not safe, especially certain people or situations. And we might unwittingly put ourselves in harm's way. And that's a problem. Other times we might overreact to neutral things and assume they're unsafe when they actually are okay. Or we might avoid things because we're afraid they're unsafe and we're missing out on life because we're afraid of getting harmed, but there actually isn't any harm. So we want to be able to have a better way of telling what's safe and what's dangerous, because that's important in our daily lives, because we want to make decisions based on reality, not based on what our nervous system is telling us, which could be off. Okay. So if we, during a time of trauma in the past, or even in the present, get activated and we're in hyperarousal mode, so we're really revved up, anxious or angry, we might feel really uncomfortable with that. So we might do anything we can to just squash that response and shut it down. Or we might just act it out. Okay. But if we don't let it pass naturally, it gets stuck in our body. And so when it's stuck in our body, it keeps reemerging every once in a while. It's kind of like if you had chicken pox and there's always a chance you could get shingles. It's because the chicken pox varicella virus is still locked in your body. And at any time, shingles could come up, right? So if the hyperarousal is stuck in your body, at any time, some kind of animal defense could come up, and it may not even make sense in the situation, okay? So we want to be able to have an accurate sense. So in order to do that, the hyperarousal response needs to complete itself and finish. So what we could do is the next time it happens naturally, we could drop the story and just notice the different changes in physical responding during that hyperarousal activation, and just follow it and observe and describe it until it completes itself and you return to your window of tolerance. Or on purpose, perhaps with a therapist present, if you have one, bring up a sliver of memory like we did before that kind of becomes activating, becomes triggering, makes you feel like you're going to hyperarousal or something that typically would. And this time, once you start feeling the hyperarousal, drop the story and just slowly observe and describe all the feelings and sensations you have, watch it go up, and then watch it come back down. And describe how the physiological sensations change over time, because it does change. If you notice from moment to moment, it will start to be different. All right. And if you do that enough, it starts to recalibrate or reset your nervous system, and you start to get clearer about what feels safe and what feels dangerous and have a more accurate sense of it. And therefore, you can make better decisions about what to do. Okay, next, emotions and animal defenses. All right, so animal defenses like we just talked about, and it's illustrated in this picture. So we have fight, flight, and freeze, and shut down and cry for help. Okay, so the idea here is that, as you probably can guess, all the animal defenses have certain emotions associated with them, okay? So when you're in the fight response, there's a vehement emotion or like a very strong emotion associated with it, such as anger or rage, okay? Flight response, typical vehement emotions or strong emotions would be fear or terror. Crying for help might be things such as panic, desperation, or being distressed or frantic when alone. If you're in the freeze response, it might be anxiety, panic, helplessness, even agitation, plus the feeling paralyzed, although that's more physical. And shutdown, you might feel numb, detached, helpless, despairing, okay? Kind of just a lot of times associated with depression. So when these strong emotions come up, they could be very uncomfortable, okay? And just like when any animal defense is out of control, we might feel really uncomfortable and do desperate things to try to make it go away. So I might use drugs, I might cut myself, I might engage in my eating disorder behavior. I might do something desperate in order to try to make myself feel better because it's so uncomfortable. Or I might just randomly act it out and that creates more problems for me, okay? So what we could do instead is use, again, directed mindfulness, okay? So instead of acting out the emotions, just realize that you're feeling that way and stop and be aware, okay? Drop the story, drop the trigger, just tune in and notice what you're feeling, okay? And you can notice the building blocks associated with what you're feeling, which could also be helpful. Put words to it, also helpful. And then you could then choose on purpose, because you're being mindful, choose to use your somatic resources or your just other resources to help you regulate your emotions. Okay, so instead of acting them out or doing a target behavior, you're going to use your resources and safely try to bring yourself back to your window of tolerance and calm down your emotions. Okay, so it kind of builds on the one from before, right? So kind of following it through here. Okay, and that's it. All right, so we did it. We got through the review of our memory, working with memory skills. So I hope that was helpful to you. Again, you're in full control of the process, so only do what feels right to you. Use a therapist's help if you can. Otherwise, just keep in the back of your mind, and when you're ready to use it, it's here. Okay. All right. We'll be back soon with part 3. Okay. Stage 3, which is moving forward. So hope you'll be moving forward with me soon. All right. Take care, everybody. Talk to you.